Good afternoon. Welcome to NCSA Live. I am Danny Koenig, Director of Regional Recruiting here at NCSA. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We are streaming live to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We want to get to some of your questions here later today in the episode. We are having a coach interview with one of my old friends, BJ Dunne. BJ, thank you for being here with us today.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on, Dan.
Definitely. So BJ's head basketball coach. He was the head coach at Vassar College, where I was a swim coach. BJ's over at Gettysburg College. So BJ is just an absolute wealth of knowledge, one of the most organized coaches I've ever met in my entire life. We're going to be picking his brain here. But like I said, for those of you that are joining us on the broadcast today, drop those questions in the comment box. Want to hear what you have to say about it. You guys can ask anything to BJ. You can ask anything to me, but you're here with two college coaches. So topic is, again, coach interview, just communication between athletes and college coaches. We obviously want to talk to Coach here and just learn a little bit more about him, but pick his brain a little bit about coach communication, especially over COVID and how that's impacting recruiting. Obviously discuss some of the communications with athletes between himself and some of the prospects that he's looking into, talk about COVID, and personally what he's going through on that side of things and some of the changes there. But then, like I said, Q&A at the end. You guys can throw anything our way. We'll be happy to answer those. So, BJ, let's dive into this here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell me, just give the people a little bit about your background. Obviously, you came up playing ball, got into coaching, but walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the New England area. I grew up 30 minutes outside of Boston. I played college basketball at Bates College in the NESCAC. Had a really great student athlete experience there. And it was really, my junior year going into my senior year that I kind of got that coaching bug and just really loved, the idea of the process and, relationships and being with your teammates and appreciating the journey. And when I graduated, I spent a year at Babson College in Massachusetts in the NUMAC. I also had an opportunity to work for Jim O'Brien at Emerson College. Jim was the head coach at Boston College in Ohio State. I actually was really lucky. My first 2 years as an assistant, my two mentors and bosses that I worked for were National Coach of the Year award winners. So, was super thankful to have those opportunities. I then spent 6 years at Vassar College, 5 as the head coach of that program. And then I just finished my second year as the head coach at Gettysburg College. So I've been really lucky to work with some really great people. I've coached some really incredible student athletes. And I'm itching to get back to school and, see my guys. It's been a long time.
Yeah, man, you and everybody else. So one of the things that BJ glossed over there very, very briefly, very high academic background, not only as a player, but as a coach. So very familiar with that space. And, it's something that we talk about a lot about with our athletes, just, having to have those good grades. And if you want to play at a certain level academically, you need to be there because a lot of admissions departments are not making concessions for any of their athletes to get into school. So, appreciate BJ being here. Want to get to some questions here briefly. I guess primarily let's start with the communication side of things, BJ. How to contact college coaches, just one of the topics that we tend to talk a lot about. Families, want to know about the importance of being proactive and reaching out. But let's get your perspective here as a college coach. How should athletes let you know they're interested in your program?
For sure. I think, the first thing for us is we really appreciate as a coaching staff the responsiveness of student athletes. And when coaches reach out, for us, it's been predominantly done through text. We've tried to, avoid email as much as possible lately. I think that's kind of that initial contact. A prospective student athlete may send us an email, but, once we kind of take that thing offline and go through text and phone calls, it's the student athletes that, are being responsive. They're getting back in touch with us. I think that really shows us directly their interest, in our program. And, we're recruiting, a lot of prospective student athletes. They're going to look at a lot of colleges. It's okay if you're not interested. I think that transparency and that communication is super important.
Yeah. And really, we talk about that a lot, is that best fit. It's pretty much everything when you're looking at schools or putting together that target list of schools. And as a coach, you recognize that not every kid is going to find your program to be the best fit for what they're looking for. So interesting you said that initially it's going to start with email contact. Is that something you're looking for from a student athlete proactively?
Yeah, we definitely, I think this has been a really funky year. I think we all can agree with that. In terms of just a lot of our student athletes have a lot more time on their hands, probably to send more emails than ever. Not having, especially for basketball, not having that spring where you're active, on the AU circuit or prospect camps, and coaches are going to make that initial contact with you. I think it's really important then for the student athlete to be proactive, and you've had a lot of time to really assess, like, what are the 10 schools that you really want to go to and really hone in on them. That's kind of what we've done, from the recruiting side as coaches. But, we are looking for that, initial reach out, that initial email. We appreciate something that's personalized. We don't really tend to dive too deep into a form email. We want the prospective student athlete to know about Gettysburg College. I can't tell you how many emails I get. Like, I'm so excited about your engineering program. Well, we don't have an engineering program, or, the coach's name is wrong, or there's some, misspelled words. Like, looking at all those things, this is your first opportunity to really show us who you're about, what your character's about, and, are we going to, proceed recruiting you? So, we like something that's short, concise, it's to the point. We want video in there. And we want to be able to get your cell phone, number, so we can start reaching out to you.
Love that. Attention to detail is everything for coaches, because they spend a lot of time trying to figure out who's actually interested in the program. If you get a student athlete that emails you and they've actually done the research, it's going to help you stand out amongst the crowd. So if you're a student athlete, how do you know if a college coach is interested in you?
It's a good question. So especially now, it's been a little different where, you used to be able to go to AAU events or prospect camps, and you shoot a kid a text, or they could see you on the court, right? And they know, like, immediately, oh man, like Coach Dunne is on the court, or a Gettysburg assistant coach, he's there. Like, I see the G, like, they definitely want me, they're interested. So we're just doing some different things as a staff, just some different ways to connect and reach out, whether that's through text, emailing back. We've been FaceTiming a lot. We've had a lot of individual Zooms. We've actually watched kids do individual workouts, like when they're outside at the park or in their driveway. I think you're going to know if a coach is interested in you, if they're going above or beyond what you kind of expect, what your expectation is of that type of conversation with a coach. So, and I think, coaches pay attention to the language that the coach uses, their enthusiasm with you. How much time they're, taking to really get to know you. I think building relationships with you is going to show a great deal of the coach's interest in you.
It's so interesting because, there's these kind of like grassroots guerrilla tactics that you're talking about. Even just watching a workout in somebody's driveway. And I think, for a lot of these student athletes and their families, it's like, well, I don't have the perfect highlight tape put together to a college coach, so I'm not going to send anything at all. But you guys are really taking that personal approach. You're reaching out, you're doing the FaceTimes, the individual Zooms, you're watching workouts in any capacity. And I just think that's really good feedback for a lot of people to hear, that, coaches understand that this is a very, very strange time. It doesn't mean that they're not trying to build their championship roster. They're just going about it a little bit differently and kind of taking whatever they can get at this point. So let's talk about the flip side here a little bit. We just talked a little bit about how to know if you're an athlete, if a college coach is interested in you. How do you know if a coach is not interested in you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's on the coach to really, be transparent and just upfront and say, we're not interested. There's something that, could be off. Maybe it's academically. I think honestly, that's the first thing, Danny, for us is, when we look at your transcript or your test scores. I mean, we are test optional, but, we look at your transcript. It could be right away say, hey, we just don't think this is going to be the fit. I think, academically, this could be really difficult for you. Or, maybe it's positionally, there's something there that we're just not interested in. And then, sometimes down the road, it could be character fit. They're just not the right guys, for the program. For us, we're really tasked with rebuilding a program. We need guys who love the work and want to embrace the chase. And that's not for everyone. And, we have to do some serious vetting on our end as a coaching staff. And those are, difficult conversations to have. I think, sometimes coaches can get just, we get so many emails. I think it's hard to get back to everyone. I think, naturally we're going to, there's some guys that we're going to reach back to, and there's some that are not. And I think, unfortunately that could be a way too that, a coach can kind of let you know that they're not super interested, but, we try and be as transparent as possible in the process with our prospective student athletes.
Yeah. Certainly appreciate that. So some of what you're talking about is going to be that initial feel, whether it's from academics or watching highlight tape. Some of what you're talking about is through relationship building, and that's not necessarily something you're going to be able to tell from an NCSA profile, but through some conversations or meeting with families or doing homework with coaches, which is all things that you're going to do to build that championship roster. So again, we're here with BJ Dunne. He is the head men's basketball coach at Gettysburg College. Let's hone in a little bit on that email component, because I know that's a really popular way to kind of introduce both on your end and for student athletes. So a lot of athletes and their families want to know, how do you email a college coach? So what should athletes say in their email that would catch your attention?
Yeah, I think something that's just short, concise. I mean, I think bullet points is always easy to really look at. We want to make sure that they know something about Gettysburg College, or something about our program. There's something about the college that they're excited about, whether that's academic interest, social interest, or that, they know something about our roster type, style of play. They've done their research. I think that really shows us that, okay, like, this kid's the real deal. Like, this isn't just let me throw something at the wall and hope a coach emails me back. Like, this is a college that I actually really want to be at. And then as they progress, we're looking for, height, position, any accolades that they have. I think we can do the assessment of their playing ability. And then, some type of, highlight tape link or full game footage. Academic information is always appreciated, and then the right contact information. And then, from there, as a coaching staff, we're going to look at it. Does he fit our academic, does he fit us academically? Does he fit us with what we're trying to recruit to in this class? All right, yes, he does. Let's watch his tape. All right, we watch his tape, and then let's go take this offline and get to know this kid a little more.
Yeah, really, really good feedback. And a couple of things that I want to call out there. Number one, being proactive. I think it shows that you've done your homework, you found the right school, you know a little bit about that school, and you might have questions about that, which is totally fair to put in an email as well. But Coach Dunne sitting here saying, hey, include that video. We want to be able to assess you up front. Tell me a little bit about why it is that you like my school. What has brought you my way, versus like what he said earlier, shy away from generic emails, e-blasting that out to 100 different coaches where they may not even have your major. So all really good stuff. Now, this one is something that we talk a little bit about, but you had mentioned it briefly, that you get hundreds of emails and you're sending out a lot of different emails. But what's something that would be in a subject line for our high school student athletes that they could include that's going to gain your attention?
When we see like there's so much in that headline, it almost to us is like, oh, this is form. Whereas it's like just something like, short and concise, name, 21, prospective, recruit for Gettysburg College. I think, we're a staff that we're going to do our homework. Like, we're going to read it. I don't know if I've seen like any, headline, honestly, Danny, that's been like, man, like I got to read this email. But, I think just something that, it looks a little more personal than something that has just been blasted out to, 100 coaches.
Yeah, I'm totally with that. So this is another interesting one that comes up from a lot of our student athletes and families. What is a time of day is best to send an email to a college coach?
Oh man, that's a really good question. So, probably like at any time, but I think before 4 o'clock probably. I think most of us at the Division III level start kind of practice around 4 o'clock. Like, you send anything after, we're not getting back to you till like the next morning. But I think if like you're sending something to us, anytime before that, we're gonna look at it. We're gonna have maybe forwarded on to one of our coaches, and we'll give it a look. We prefer, like, we try and get as much as we can done before noon in our coaching staff. It's kind of like our beliefs and philosophies. Just there's a lot that comes up after lunch. Guys before practice or before workout, they want to pop into the office. They want to hang out. They want to watch film. They want to talk X's and O's. You're talking life with them. And we kind of like maybe shut it down a little bit. So we try and get as much done as we can in the morning. So, we're morning staff. So for us, morning email would be well received.
Yeah, and of course, if you send that coach an email, just understand that they may not get back to you until the next day. Sure. But, like you said, your job and your goal is to get back to anybody as soon as possible, be open and transparent, which is much appreciated on both sides. So necessarily no wrong answer. I think if you're going through this process and you're actually being proactive and reaching out to coaches, speaks volumes, but just be patient about it, because you go into workout, and then you're wrapped up with workout, and you're probably on the horn with a lot of athletes in the evening, making your recruiting calls, not necessarily paying attention to the email. Now, I guess, is email the best methodology for getting in touch with the coach? I mean, where do you place texts, phone calls, FaceTimes? I mean, how do you place your importance?
Yeah, I think once they've we've made that introductory connection, I think from a student athlete to a coach, they're probably going to shoot us an email to start. But, for coaches, like once we've seen them play at a camp or an AAU event, like we're texting, like we're going right to their phone. Student athletes always have their cell phones on them. So that's like where, primarily our communication is going to be after that introductory potential email. So, we do a lot of texting. If a student athlete has any questions, or they just want to hit us up, we love that. We love just getting random texts from our, perspectives, letting us know, hey, coach, I'm going to be at this event this weekend. Here's my schedule. Hey, coach, we want to come visit, or, hey, I just want to catch up. How you doing? I think those are all great. Allows us to build, stronger relationships that way. And then again, we've done more FaceTimes and Zooms than ever, because you're just not seeing the student athlete, perspectives like you usually do at the camps, at the AAU events. You're not having that FaceTime. So we're just trying to create that type of connection, because we really believe as a staff, kids more than ever right now are going to make decisions based on the relationships that they have with the coaching staff, because they may not get to experience campuses in their current environment. So, we have to continue to do everything that we have to, let the student athletes know, what type of enthusiasm and passion we have, for our program and for them.
And something you keep bringing up is that relationship building process, which is huge, because you're going to get to know these kids for 4 years at their time at college. But you want to know exactly who it is that you're recruiting well in advance of that. So text messages is always going to be a big one for you guys, and you're just staying in constant communication with the athletes that you're recruiting. But one thing that also comes up for a lot of student athletes is the social media presence. And I know you're a big social media guy. On a scale from 1 to 10, how important is it for one of your prospective student athletes to have that social media presence?
Yeah, I think it's a 7 or an 8. I think definitely utilizing, for the right way, blasting out, highlight tapes. We like to just use it to show, our perspective some love. They tweet something, we'll give it a like. Maybe on Instagram they post something, we'll DM them. We just try and let them know that, hey, man, there's a lot of touch points that can be happened, throughout the recruiting process, throughout the day. And we just want them to always be thinking about Gettysburg basketball. So I do think it's important for them to utilize. I think it's an easy way to communicate and to get their information, and disseminate, their information and who they are out there. And then they got to make sure that they're using it for good, because, depending on what you retweet, or what you potentially tweet, those things can have some damaging effects on you in the recruiting process. And, we're looking at those things too, because you want to make sure that you really know the type of person that you're getting into your program for 4 years.
Yeah, can learn a lot about somebody by their social media presence and kind of what they're putting out there. But no, appreciate that. Now, kind of last thing I'll say about social media, is that a way for you to identify prospective student athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we definitely comb through AAU programs, Twitters, AAU coaches. We've come up with a couple names just through Twitter and just doing some research, especially more than ever. I think social media has been really important, because, again, we're not physically able to go to events. There's just not that many events. It's just another way for us to dig up some names and do some research. And, I'm really lucky that our assistant coaches are great at that stuff, and finding new names and being active on social media for us.
Yeah, again, we're here with VJ Dunne, head men's basketball coach at Gettysburg College. So similar vein, I know we talked a lot about not being able to be at events, AAU tournaments. COVID undeniably has changed the course of recruiting here in the last 3, 4, 5 months. Is going to continue to impact things as we move forward. But I know you're a competitive guy, and you're trying to be competitive within your conference and make the NCAA tournament. So recruiting for you isn't really ever going to stop. We obviously want to address how COVID-19 is impacting your recruiting. So with the suspension of in-person recruiting, college coaches just more heavily relying on virtual recruiting to communicate with athletes. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience dealing with the obstacles of COVID-19?
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, when everything kind of came to a head and shut down in March, that's when you're trying to finish, your class of 20 recruiting class. And, we still had a couple kids, out there that unfortunately didn't get to visit. And, you're doing Zooms, you're having to meet some of the guys virtually. I actually drove to campus and I gave a tour while the family was in the car behind me, and we were communicating through the Bluetooth in the car. And he committed, so I might have to try that more often. It was just, I was like, man, this is so bizarre. Like, and it actually took an hour. I was like, oh, this is going to take like 5 minutes. Like, what are we doing? But you have to get creative. You have to go above and beyond. And it's just been different, not having the spring, not having real events in the summer. I mean, there's games that are live streamed. It's obviously a little different, feel than actually being in the gym. Like, I like being in the gym. I like to be able to put my eyes on someone. It's hard to sometimes see the body language when you're watching on the live stream. So, it's definitely been different. I think for us as a staff, we were like, all right, who are our top like 30 guys? And let's just identify those, and we're just going to go all in, and here are the chips. And we are just going to really build relationships with these guys. We're going to talk to the high school coaches, their AU coaches. We're going to try and get to know a ton of information about them. And, we're just going to be hopeful that that pays off for us, because I think just digging up new names, with not knowing a lot about camps, it's going to be hard. So that was kind of our thought process. And, we're well versed in the Zoom world right now. And just sending guys presentations, graphics. I mean, you name it, we're trying to do it. But
so interesting shift though, because you had narrowed things down quite a bit. You said, hey, this is the group that I'm going to focus on. And I would assume that you're not spending an hour in the car driving around campus for just anybody. Right. So these are guys that you built relationships with, that you're very familiar with, that you're willing to do that for. But I wouldn't think that the door is necessarily closed for everybody out there. Maybe some of these athletes just need to make the right moves to get on your radar and really express some interest. So I don't want anybody out there to think, hey, if I'm not contacted by a college coach now going into my sophomore, junior, senior year, I'm not going to be recruited. I think there's still a lot of opportunity to do that. You just got to get on your horse and actually get in front of some of these college coaches. So undeniably, things have changed a little bit, gotten a little bit tighter. You're not able to be at events. But what should recruits whose seasons have been postponed or canceled do to keep the college recruiting process moving forward? What are you looking for as a coach?
I think, we're looking for the prospective, student athlete that, is going to go above or beyond. I think the guys who, that there's potential for it to be postponed or canceled, what other ways can they get out in front of us? And it's not just, visiting campus and spending time with us. Like I mentioned before, like we've had guys, live, video us in to a workout. We're looking for guys, who are going to do those things. And, this is a really difficult situation. Like I feel for everyone right now who's had their season canceled or postponed. We're kind of going through some of that. Our spring athletes obviously went through it, and it's not easy, but we just keep trying to tell our guys, like, have an optimistic approach. You got to win the weight. Like we have to be the best team at this weight. And this, the prospective student athletes that, have that outlook, they have that mental fortitude to be able to kind of push through. I think those are the guys, that are going to fit well into our program and really help us. But I think, more workouts that you can do, we could maybe go see you do an outdoor workout, reach out to coaches and say, hey, like I'm going to be at the park. Like, we're allowed to pop in and check that out. So, again, I think just being creative, I don't have all the answers for it. I think it's just a really funky time, but the more film, the better. It's really all I got for you there.
Over communicate, be proactive. Don't run in the opposite direction. Coach Dunne is sitting here saying, I'm looking for those guys that really want to grind, that are basically projecting out that I'm going to be good fit for your program because I can get it done in a really, really strange time. But of course, the emphasis on video, highlight, or potentially skills video, workout videos, whatever you have available to you, go out there and get it done, because these coaches are still paying attention. They're still building relationships, these sorts of things. So really appreciate that, Coach Dunne. I think that's really valuable information for a lot of our student athletes. So make the most of this time. If you're a high school student athlete, don't sit on the couch doing nothing. You got to continue to get better at your sport, but you also need to engage in the recruiting process. And again, if you need help with any of that, you can turn to NCSA. We've got webinars. We've got good content on the website. This recruiting journey doesn't need to shift too much. because you still have coaches out there that are willing to pay attention to what you're doing and be in touch in that regard. So I want to get to some questions. I'm interested to hear what we have here, a little Q&A. When is the appropriate time to ask a coach about scholarships? BJ, take it away.
Oh man, that's a good one. I wish I had scholarships to offer at our level. I'm going to rephrase that, just for us at Division III level, if you don't mind, Danny, it's more of like, hey, like, are you going to support support me through the admissions process? And, do I have a spot, on the roster for next year? And, I think it's an appropriate time to ask that after you, had some good conversations back and forth with the coach. You've at least visited campus at least once. The coach is kind of giving you a pretty good idea of kind of where you fit, in the recruiting class. And then I think it's an appropriate, time to say, well, coach, if, I wanted to come to Gettysburg, is there a roster spot available for me?
So you mean to tell me that like first email to a coach, it's not appropriate to see if you can get a full ride?
Yeah, probably not. But I will tell you that, we were talking about like titles that would like grip you. I mean, that might be one. Like, first email, I'm seeking scholarship offer. What do you think? I may open that.
Yeah, well, hey, you're going to get the attention. I don't know if you're going to get the scholarship, but no, and you bring up a good point because you're at a high academic school. You've dealt with high academic schools. It's not about scholarship. It's about getting into that institution and what kind of support you might have from the coaching staff. But what you had said holds absolutely true for the Division I level as well. If there's scholarships there, they're not just they're not going to fall out of the sky and into your lap because you're a decent ball player. Those coaches want to know exactly who you are and that they built that relationship and that you visited campus. They're looking for that commitment from you as well to even take that trip and spend your time and your weekend to sit down with the coach. So maybe after those things, it would be appropriate to ask for scholarships. So what else we got? Questions. At what age do kids start making connections with recruiters? So BJ, you're in an interesting situation as a Division III coach. You can actually start having back and forth communications with student athletes day one of their freshman year. But tell us a little bit more about your process when you're actually going to be able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So, we really focus on the next class. Like right now, we're really focused on the class of 21s. We get some emails from 22s and 23s, and, we try and, reach back out to them and just connect with them. But, for us, at the Division III level, and especially with basketball being a sport where, your season can help influence your recruiting. Whereas, I think some of the soccers and lacrosse is like, they're so far ahead in their recruiting because, their sport, that season doesn't really help them as much get recruited by the schools that they may want to, like they're a year ahead. So, for us, we're really focused on that next class. We'll start with that next class though, like in January or February of their junior year. We'll go out and watch some of the high school games, see you in state playoff games. We'll try and get you on campus over your breaks in February, March, and April. So that for us is really when those like kind of first contacts start. But, schools that you're really interested in at prospect camps, some of the best players that we've recruited, have been coming to our prospect camp since their sophomore year. They've been on our campus. They've been coached by us. They've been able to build really strong relationships with us. I mean, one of our freshmen who's coming in from North Carolina, he actually came to one of my prospect camps when I was at Vassar. And then he came to two when I was at Gettysburg. So him and I have known each other for almost 4 years now. And it just made, the whole recruiting process that much easier. So, to kind of shorten it up, that was a long way, but we'll start recruiting that next class, like your junior year of your freshman and your January or February. But, if you really are interested in that school, I'd recommend starting to go to their prospect camp starting as a sophomore.
And there you go. I mean, and BJ's at a Division III program, the highly competitive Division I programs for anybody out there that wants to be able to do that. You need to be running at a pretty early timeline and be familiar with that. So, interesting too, because you're very focused on the 2021s. We shift a little bit to the 2022s, which are the rising juniors. You say that you're actually going to make a commitment to go out and see some of those athletes come January or February. Now, you probably have to work that into your recruiting budget long before then, meaning that some of these 2022s that are going into their junior year now, they need to start that communication process with you. So again, going back to the earlier episode, just emails, filling out a questionnaire for you, getting to know the coach a little bit. That's all on the table for you at a Division III right now to have that open communication. So 2022s, if you're out there, you're interested in what BJ's doing, it's time to start thinking a little bit about making some contact there. So want to continue to get some other questions here. We got Carol. When posting on social media, should you tag the colleges you would like to get recruited by?
That's a good question. I think that's I think that's good. I would say though, I really like appreciate it when we've already been, connected, like we've already had some type of communication. Sometimes like, our whole staff or like our GburgMBB account will like get tagged and like we know nothing about the prospect. We've seen that they've tagged like 20 other colleges. And I think that goes back to like the personal, like, are they just throwing something on the wall and is it going to stick, or is this something that, they're really, really interested in Gettysburg? So I think it's a little different if they've reached out to us and, there's only 5 schools that are tagged. I don't know if that's the best answer. It's only happened, once or twice for us, but when we were tagged, there was like 30 schools also that were tagged on it. And, sometimes that can be a little bit of a turnoff because again, you just don't know how excited they are about Gettysburg in general.
Right. Just putting stuff out there about themselves. And then it can work in a negative sense, I guess from your perspective to say, hey, do we want this kind of student athlete blowing up our social media? We're trying to present in a certain way as well and communicate that. So really good feedback. The social media one is really big for a lot of parents and student athletes. What should I be doing with this? How do I curate a social media account that's going to be interesting to college coaches? But you're sitting here saying you still need to have that personalized attention to that coach and that program, even if you're doing that through social media. So that's good. One more question here I want to get to. This is from Therese. What is the best way for a kid to get on the radar?
Yeah, I think just going back to what we were saying earlier, Danny, sending that, really good email, that's going to have all the pertinent information that a coach is going to need to make an assessment if you're going to be the right fit for that institution and the program. That kind of, but then, I'd also say, for us in terms of as a basketball coach, and I think, for a majority of coaches, like when we're at an event, we know and coaches, we spend, this is our job is to, you're kind of assessing talent, right? And, what's someone's skill set and ability. Best way to get on a radar is obviously you're going to have that, but man, are you a really great teammate? Like, are you someone that people like really enjoy being around? Like, do you bring joy? Do you bring positivity? Is there a ton of enthusiasm? Like, are you making people better? And, when you're in that locker room, are people going to enjoy being around you? And I think that's a really, coaches make a lot of decisions based on that. And I think as a prospective student athlete, I think everyone can sometimes be fixated, especially in basketball, putting the ball in the hoop. Well, there's going to be 15 guys on the roster who may have been really great and elite at putting the ball in the hoop. We need to make sure that we have 15 guys who can put a ball in the hoop, get a stop, and are really great teammates. So, that's to me, when you're at an event, the best way to get on a radar is incredible body language. You're incredibly coachable. You're picking your teammates up. And you just have this great enthusiasm and energy about you that's contagious.
In the coaching world, we call those intangibles, the things that are not going to show up on a stat sheet. And that's exactly why you're going there to scout, is to kind of see how they carry themselves. If you get smacked by another team, how do you bounce back from a loss? How are you picking up your teammates? How do you interact with your coaches? Are you coachable? So really happy that you're touching on that because that's important for every single college coach in the country. We actually have one last question here that came in. That's a pretty good one. Which social media platform is the most beneficial for recruiting? BJ, which ones do you use the most?
Yeah, I would say Twitter is probably the best because I just think that's the majority of coaches are going to have a Twitter account. They're going to have a personal Twitter. They're also going to have, a team is going to have a Twitter. I think Instagram can be a little more personal, whereas, Twitter is going to be more like business-like. So I would say Twitter is the best one for us that we use.
Good stuff. Again, BJ Dunne, head basketball coach at Gettysburg College. Want to celebrate some of our commitments here on the NCSA side of things. We'll throw the graphics up here in a second. First one, Austin Gordon. He's a baseball player. He's actually a 2021 grad, so he's going into a senior year this year. He's out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He's committed to Clemson University as a rising senior. So congrats to Austin. We got Carly LaFerriere. She's a 2021 as well. She's going into her senior year, women's lacrosse player out of Lowell, Massachusetts. She's going to Flagler College in St. Augustine, Florida. Congratulations to you, Carly. And then last but not least, Sarah Grace Clifton. She's a 2022 grad. So she is a rising junior that's already verbally committed to Davidson College for the field hockey program there. And Sarah Grace coming out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So again, we talked about it earlier. You see how early that can happen. She's already verbally committing, not even in her junior year yet. But obviously want to celebrate some of those guys that have been working with NCSA and have found their home That's really what we do it here for. So next week, we will be diving into the new NCAA rules about scholarships, always a very popular topic. But I want to thank Coach BJ Dunne for being here with us today. You see down there at the bottom, if you're interested in what Coach is doing, you want to get in touch with him, there's his Twitter, his Instagram. He just said Twitter is what he prefers to get in touch if you're doing that through social media, but make that a little bit more personal. Do some research on Gettysburg. Really good school. If you like what you're doing, fill out a questionnaire for Coach Dunne. Shoot him a quick email. Right, short and sweet, but make sure that you've done your research on the program. I'm sure he'd be happy to get to you guys. But BJ, thanks for being here with us today. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Always great to reconnect with you, Danny.
Yeah, same here. So hopefully we'll touch base soon. Want to thank everybody for being here and interacting with the platform, asking good questions here for Coach Dunne and myself. We have webinars coming up all this week. Be sure to tune into NCSA for some of those as well. Again, I am Danny Koenig, Director of Recruiting here at NCSA. We will see you guys very soon.